American actor Gregory Peck was a mainstay on American television from the 40s through the 70s. Peck won over fans with his numerous memorable parts, which led to 5 Oscar nominations and, ultimately, an Oscar. Nevertheless, fans were greatly disappointed by Peck's personal relationship experiences. Despite his achievements, Peck went through a string of misfortunes involving his children, on top of his ruined marriages. Let us go into Gregory Peck's life and the tragic struggles he endured before his passing. Eldred La Jolla, California is the site of Gregory Peck's birth on April 5, 1916. His father, Gregory Pearl Peck, was a pharmacist and chemist from Rochester, New York, and his mother, Bernice May, was known as Bunny. One of his father's ancestors was of Irish and English descent, yet his mother's family was of English and Scots descent. Gregory was brought up in the faith of his dad, who converted his mom to Catholicism. Thomas Ashe, Gregory's paternal grandpa, was a member of the Easter Rising and a hunger striker who died in 1917. Gregory's Irish grandma, Catherine Ashe, was a relative of Thomas. When he was 5 years old, his parents divorced and he moved in with his grandma. While his upbringing was anything but stable, he did enjoy going to the movies with his grandma and devoted dog. He enrolled in St. John's Military Academy, a Los Angeles-based Catholic military academy, when he was 10 years old. His grandmother died while he was there. He returned to San Diego to be with his father at the age of 14. His educational background includes San Diego High School 1934 graduation and San Diego State Teachers College, now San Diego State University, where he enrolled for 1 year. At that period, he became a part of the Epsilon Eta fraternity, began taking classes in theater and public speaking, and joined the track team. Originally from California, he went to Berkeley in 1936 to get a degree in medicine, but changed his major to English instead. He was a member of the university crew and stood at a towering 6 feet 3 inches. Peck struggled to pay for his tuition, despite the fact that it was only $1.26 per year. I began working for the Gamma Phi Beta sorority as a kitchen helper in return for free meals. Peck was well known for his silky voice while he was a student at Berkeley. Plus, he decided to try acting after enrolling in a public speaking master class. The acting coach at his university, Kai Ebright, saw his potential and urged him to make acting his career. The head of the university's Little Theater, Edwin Dewar, recruited him to join the acting club. Not long after, he began to take an increased interest in acting and began to appear in stage productions. In his final year of university, he joined the Little Theater after being invited by Edwin Dewar, the director. He performed in 5 plays, one of which was Moby Dick, where he played the role of Starbuck. In retrospect, Peck remarked, "It was a very special experience for me and 3 of the greatest years of my life," when discussing his tenure at Berkeley. "That experience aroused me and made me a human being." Peck was absent from 1 class, which prevented him from graduating with his friends from college. His pals were concerned about his future without his degree, but he assured them, "I've learned all I need from college." After deciding to cease going by Eldred, Peck moved to New York City to hone her acting skills. He enrolled in the local playhouse to study acting with Sanford Meisner, a renowned instructor. He would occasionally spend the night in Central Park due to his lack of funds, so she took on some low-paying jobs to get by. Among his several occupations prior to 1940 were those of a radio host, a tour guide for NBC television at Rockefeller Center, and a barker for the 1939 World's Fair. In addition to acting in productions such as Family Portrait and On Earth as It Is, he modeled and worked as a food vendor at Virginia's Barter Theater. Peck began performing in plays after studying with Sanford Meisner at the neighborhood playhouse. The Doctor's Dilemma, a play by George Bernard Shaw, was his stage debut in 1941. Jonathan, Stephen, and Carrie were his sons from his marriage to Greta Kukkonen in October 1942. They kept in touch and were amicable even after they split up in 1955. Along with Emlyn Williams, he appeared in the Broadway production The Morning Star. He co-starred with Edward Pauley in another Broadway production that year, The Willow and I. Because of a back injury he sustained while taking dancing classes with Martha Graham, an element of his acting training, Peck was unable to enlist in the military during WWII, but his acting abilities were in high demand. While 20th Century Fox said he injured his back while rowing in college, Peck countered that Hollywood didn't consider dance to be a particularly challenging subject. For quite some time, he cleared up this confusion. Peck appeared in 50 plays, including 3 short-lived Broadway productions, numerous tours, and summer theatrical engagements. His 1944 portrayal in John M. Stahl's The Keys of the Kingdom catapulted him to stardom. It was in this film that he had his first shot at an Oscar. Peck's on-screen persona demonstrated his popularity. No matter his role, he seemed like a decent guy. He was tall, powerful, and courageous. He portrays a Catholic priest in his 80s. Contemplating his resolute missionary labor in China for about half a century. With Peck in practically every scene, the film follows him as he ages from his 20s to his 80s. It was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Actor, which was Peck's first. The part is considered Peck's breakthrough role, which propelled him to stardom. Despite the film's lack of box office success, the picture received mixed reviews from critics, but his performance was well received and boosted his career. His subsequent film credits include 1944's The Valley of Decision, among many others. In this film set in Pittsburgh in the 1870s, Peck plays the role of the eldest son of a wealthy steel mill owner. An Oscar-nominated Greer Garson portrayed the role of one of the housekeepers Harry falls for. Reviews were generally positive, praising Peck's outstanding performance. In North America, it earned more than any other film that year. Also in 1945, he played the role of the accused murderer with amnesia in Alfred Hitchcock's Spellbound. While Bergman's character works as a psychoanalyst at the mental institution, Peck plays a man who is thought to be the new director. Nonetheless, he may be a killer due to his forgetfulness and disturbing visions. Polite but emotionally detached was the dynamic between Peck and Hitchcock. Hitchcock had originally cast Cary Grant as the lead. When Peck initially worked with Hitchcock, he was self-conscious about his youth and the director's apparent disinterest in the inner workings of his character, which were integral to his performance. There was fantastic chemistry between Peck and co-star Ingrid Bergman. According to Peck, he should just acknowledge that he had an affair with Bergman and that he had a genuine love for her. Back then, I was a young man. It was her youth. For weeks, we worked side by side intensely. Spellbound was the 3rd most profitable picture of 1946 after its 1945 release. Players like Peck and Bergman were well received by critics for their performances in Spellbound. Peck was lauded for his understated and nuanced portrayal of Bergman. The film catapulted Peck to Hollywood stardom and, according to Turner Classic Movies' Frank Miller, a significant sex symbol. When the name Gregory Peck appeared in the credits, producer David O. Selznick saw that the female audience members reacted angrily. In fact, he had to hushy them during his initial scenes to get them to calm down. The National Board of Review did not include Spellbound in their top 10 films of the year list, despite the fact that it received 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. Peck co-stars with Jane Wyman as a doting father in the 1946 film The Yearling, about a boy in 1870s Florida who wants to take care of a juvenile deer he adopts. Bosley Crowther praised it as a film that provides a level of contentment that is rare in cinema, and critics generally agreed when it was released. Among The Yearling's 6 Oscar nominations was one for Best Actor, for which Peck was nominated and ultimately won the Golden Globe. The film was a financial success. Critics still give it high marks, some even go so far as to call it a classic among family films. He excelled in Western films. Duel in the Sun, a film that was critically panned, was only one of many films in which he appeared. Playing a vicious cowboy on the Western soap opera with Jennifer Jones as his love interest was Peck's attempt at something new. Sparks flew between them due to their chemistry, which was characterized as an ongoing struggle of sensuality. Playing another suitor for Jones's heart, Joseph Cotton was Peck's honorable half-brother. Some jurisdictions outright banned the film due to the scandalous nature of its explicit content, which garnered a great deal of media attention. In spite of critical qualms, it ranked among the highest-grossing films of 1947 and the entire 1940s. Although reviews for Peck's performance were mixed, Jones was nominated for an Oscar for her part. Still, he had a few flops in the 40s and 50s, including 1947's The Paradigm Case, as well as 1948's The Great Sinner. Along with Mel Ferrer and Dorothy McGuire, Peck helped found the La Jolla Playhouse in his hometown that same year. Until 1964, they held their shows in the La Jolla High School auditorium. The Playhouse relocated to UC San Diego in 1983 and remains there to this day. Famous actors and actresses from Hollywood have frequented the theater over the years, either as performers or patrons. The Macumber Affair, Peck's subsequent feature film, was a low-budget serious drama. He portrayed the role of a safari guide who helped a couple on a hunting trip in Africa. Things become tricky when Joan Bennett's character, the wife, falls for Peck and her husband is shot. Peck had a significant hand in casting the film and was an advisor to the filmmaker. Although critics gave it good reviews, Peck was unhappy that viewers didn't enjoy it. Throughout his career, Peck was known for portraying upright characters with strong moral convictions. In late 1947, he was cast as the lead in Elia Kazan's film Gentleman's Agreement. Many saw it as the first big effort by Hollywood to combat anti-Semitism. In order to feel the hatred of racism personally, Peck portrayed a magazine journalist who poses as Jewish. Best Picture and Best Director were among the 8 Oscar nominations received by the film. In terms of box office receipts, it was the year's runner-up. In retrospect, Peck saw it as a crowning achievement. The daring and high-quality film was lauded by critics, as many were captivated by Peck's portrayal. Nevertheless, views on Peck's performance, the film's adequacy in light of modern standards, and its success in combating anti-Semitism have diverged in recent times. On the other hand, other people thought the movie was significant, but not great. Peck first portrayed the heroic, efficient, and sympathetic military commander for which he would be famous in his second film of 1949, 12 O'Clock High. Actual story served as the inspiration for the film. During WWII, Peck took leadership of a difficult U.S. bomber group. Discipline and pride were key to Peck's persona, since he thought the last commander's intimacy with his troops was the reason they failed. Even though he was a severe commander, he became attached to his soldiers, particularly following the death of one on a perilous assignment. Peck was one of 4 Oscar nominees for the critically acclaimed picture. Reviewers lauded his portrayal, and the film was well received by reviewers and audiences alike. Film historian Peter von Bogg hailed it as one of Peck's most iconic portrayals, and the New York Times praised his ability to convey both vulnerability and toughness. After a string of commercial successes, Peck resolved to focus on films that truly piqued his attention. He continued to portray heroic-seeming individuals. Peck achieved international fame in the 50s and 60s. In 1951, he appeared in Captain Horatio Hornblower and the biblical drama David Bathsheba. In 1952, he co-starred with Ava Gardner in The Snows of Kilimanjaro, and in 1953 he starred with Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday. Peck met and fell in love with journalist Veronique Pisani despite working with stunning and accomplished actresses of the time. Paris was the site of Veronique's birth. Her father was an architect and her mother a writer and artist. France Soir, a French newspaper, hired her as a journalist. In 1953, when interviewing Gregory Peck, she happened to meet him there. Following Peck's divorce from Greta Kukkonen, which occurred 2 years later, they tied the knot on New Year's Eve. It was through this second marriage that the Peck children were born: Anthony Peck and Cecilia Peck. Charity activities in the Los Angeles area brought Veronique fame. In the 60s, she and her husband helped the American Cancer Society raise about $50 million. In 1967, she was presented with the Woman of the Year award by the Los Angeles Times. She also played a key role in establishing the Los Angeles Music Center and the Inner City Cultural Center, both of which served to unite individuals of diverse ethnic origins. She became a citizen of the United States in 1976. Her husband, who was famously generous, was clearly Veronique Generosity's rock. To pay tribute to his legendary coach, Kai Ebright, he gave $25,000 to the Berkeley rowing squad in the 1940s. In addition, he had successfully collected a substantial sum to bolster his buddy Father Albert O'Hara's missionary endeavors. In addition, he co-produced a tape of the New Testament with his son Stephen. Along with his kindness, Peck was a hard worker in his profession. The Guns of Navarone, a smash song from the early 1960s, featured him as Captain Keith Mallory. His current film, Captain Newman, Maryland, was darker than his typical fare. After receiving 4 nominations for his portrayal of lawyer Atticus Finch in the 1962 film To Kill a Mockingbird, a well-received adaptation of a well-known contemporary tale about racial injustice, he finally won his first Academy Award for the role. Peck was heavily involved in both the film industry and nonprofits. He presided over the American Film Institute's Board of Trustees from 1967 to 1969 and served as president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 1967. Peck, who had been a Democrat all entire life, was mentioned as a possible 1970 Democratic contender to run against Ronald Reagan for governor of California. Having said that, he did admit that he had no interest in seeking public office. He instead encouraged his son Kerry Peck to run for office. U.S. Representative Bob Dorn in our California, who was also an actor, narrowly defeated him in 1978 and 1980. Peck revealed that Lyndon B. Johnson had expressed an intention to nominate him to the position of United States Ambassador to Ireland, and he sought Peck's support during his 1968 re-election campaign. Peck claimed he might have accepted because of his Irish ancestry and characterized it as a fantastic trip. Peck was presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1969 for her artistic contributions, which had elevated the status of acting. Johnson reasoned that if he could award Peck the Medal of Freedom, it would compensate for his inability to nominate him ambassador. For her exceptional work in promoting acting standards, Peck was honored with the Screen Actors Guild Award in 1970. How Peck was still put on President Nixon's enemies list because of his leftist activism, even though all this was going on. Although Peck's son Stephen served in Vietnam, he opposed the war on its own terms. His many accomplishments include 1971 as head of the Motion Picture and Television Relief Fund, 1966 as American Cancer Society National Chairman, and 1971 as a member of the National. Peck was the producer of the film version of The Trial of the Catonsville Nine, a play written by Daniel Berrigan. The play depicts the narrative of 9 Vietnamese war protesters who were put in prison for their acts of civil disobedience. A horrible catastrophe befell Peck's family 3 years later. At the age of 31, Jonathan Peck, the first older son of Peck, took his own life. On July 20, 1944, in Los Angeles, Jonathan came into this world. He resembled Gregory Peck in acting. It was believed that Jonathan would go on to do great things in the years to come. After finishing college, he joined the Peace Corps, having shown promise for some time. He even devoted some time to a Swahili agricultural program in Tanzania. His return to his hometown was marked by a strong moral compass and an employment at the local radio station. Drinking and partying were never part of his life. Jonathan struggled with inner difficulties despite his seemingly innocent appearance. By the end of the day, Jonathan had shot himself in the head. After the fact, Jonathan's dad broke the news that his son's depression was due to his arteriosclerosis, a breakup, and an excessive workload. No one in the family was immune to the profound impact of this loss on Peck. After his family's loss, the actor took nearly 2 years off from acting. It was also said that Peck had checked into a mental institution at that terrible time. Anthony Peck's youngest son was embroiled in a scandal as well, adding insult to injury. Despite coming from a famous family, he reportedly battled with drug addiction, which limited his possibilities. His wife, supermodel Cheryl Tiegs, filed for a divorce, a shocking turn of events that he blamed on his reckless lifestyle. Not only did he miss out on the wonderful life he had before, but his way of living also strained his connection with his famous father. Self-harm was a result of Anthony's alcohol problems. His father was already grieving. And now there was fear that he might follow in his older brother Jonathan's footsteps and destroy his life. The Peck siblings, on the other hand, were faring well. For example, Stephen Peck dabbled with acting before realizing his calling was among the homeless, and Cecilia Peck went on to feature in films like My Best Friend is a Vampire. Reappearing in the public eye in 1980 was Peck's eventual fate. He returned to work despite the fact that he probably never got over the death of his kid. A sharp decline in sales and inventory at the automaker Chrysler Corporation in October 1980 threatened the employment of about 600,000 people. While in Detroit, Michigan, Peck and Frank Sinatra met with Lee A. Iacocca, chairman of Chrysler, and they all agreed to back Chrysler. Without receiving any compensation, Peck consented to appear in television ads promoting the new 1981 K car compacts, relying solely on his reputation to support the vehicles. He was quite worried about the people who might lose their jobs because of this. This might determine whether 600,000 families have good times or bad times, he said in a statement. I expressed my desire to provide assistance to Mr. Iacocca. Commercials featured Peck making the claim that his compassion and kindness nearly landed him in the presidency. As Ronald Reagan's popularity grew, many started to consider Peck as a possible successor. Maybe the Democrats would have been better off with Greg Peck as their governor if actors are running for office, joked California Governor Pat Brown. Apparel and insignia reading "Vote for Peck" began popping up all around the country, partially as a joke but also to encourage the actor to get involved in politics. But the notion didn't sit well with him. In subsequent interviews, Peck said, I never once thought about running. There isn't even an underlying motivation for me to do that. He co-starred with Christopher Penneth Lummer as Hugh O'Flaherty, a Catholic priest who saved numerous Allied prisoners of war and Jewish civilians in Rome during WWII. In the 1983 film The Scarlet and the Black, he began making television appearances and starred in multiple series beginning in the 1980s. The Blue and the Gray featured him as Abraham Lincoln. His last feature, Other People's Money, came out in 1991. He portrayed a firm owner who was battling to prevent a takeover by Wall Street. He left performing after this film and spent his retirement globetrotting. He was presented with an honorary Golden Bear 2 years later at the 43rd Berlin International Film Festival. The National Medal of Arts came his way 5 years afterwards. The National University of Ireland conferred the Doctor of Letters degree to him in the year 2000. Following his retirement, he received numerous Lifetime Achievement Awards, such as those from the Screen Actors Guild, the American Film Institute, the Crystal Globe, Dynastia, and the George Eastman. He made a triumphant comeback to acting in 1998, appearing in his last film role. His film The Moby Dick was adapted into a miniseries in which he appeared. He was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor in a Television Film, Miniseries, or Series for his work. Peck made an effort to be there for his loved ones more often in his latter years. Even one of his sons attested to their father's hectic schedule. Even though he was a wonderful father, his frequent absences made life difficult for his children. On the other hand, he listened attentively and was there for us when we needed him. With the arrival of grandpahood, Peck's employment responsibilities diminished. It was usually weekly that Stephen and I would get together for lunch and tennis. He was particularly pleased to witness Peck's closeness to Ethan, his grandchild. I was happy that my grandson got to know his grandpa. The two of them got along well. His reputation as a gentleman was well deserved. In 2003, at the age of 87, Peck died peacefully from bronchopneumonia. All of his loved ones held him in the highest esteem because of the positive impact he had on the world through his work in show business and in society at large.